Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome John Roberts, the embodiment of In the Loop travel. I featured John and In the Loop travel in Cruising Interrupted in a section called the Globetrotters, which focus on world travelers who transcend cruising. John is a consummate cruiser. He has sailed 120 cruises and has a wide breadth of cruising experience, from megaships to luxury craft to expedition cruises to Antarctica. Whenever I am close to booking a ship, and I wish it were one of the luxury vessels John blogs about, I first check to see if John has a review up, and he always does. Welcome, John, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Hi, Paul. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm doing a little bit of traveling. I'm on my way sort of in a deep freeze in the Midwest, making my way back from my wife's parents' house in Wisconsin. We're in Lincoln, Nebraska now. We had to hunker down. We had a big hailstorm and deep freeze in this part of the country. But on my way back home to Colorado.
Well, safe travels. So
thank you. It's kind of a warm up for some of the trips I got coming later. So I'm getting myself acclimated to some of these Arctic conditions.
Well, we'll be asking about those. For starters, tell the listeners about In the Loop Travel.
All right. So that is a website, inthelooptravel.com, and some social media platforms also will be found under In the Loop Travel. I do writing there covering cruise travel, mainly active travel fitness thing. And I also have a business where I have clients that I write and do some freelance work for some websites and magazines around the world.
So how did you get started with In the Loop Travel?
Actually, it's coming up on 10 years ago now in April, and it started from my passion for travel and cruise. I used to be in the newspaper industry for about 15 years, and that started to fall on a little harder times with some layoffs and cutbacks and things like that. So I took my journalism knowledge and my passion for travel and sort of branched out into my own and ventured out to do some more traveling and do some writing in that arena and slowly build up my audience and my website that way.
Now, one of the things that distinguishes your website and blog from other cruise bloggers is that fitness is covered extensively on your website. I know that is important to you. Talk about that.
Yeah, I personally used to play sports a lot, and I'm into fitness. As we age, I like to think that being fit and doing things like that help you live a better, more healthy life. But when it comes to travel, it's also a fun way to be able to travel a little better. You can enjoy things a little more. You can always say yes to some of the hikes you can go on, do bike rides in Europe, things like that. Even the mundane things you might not think about, getting through the airports can be a little easier, and lifting your own luggage and doing things like that is a good reason to sort of stay in shape and think of your fitness and health as you think about it alongside your travels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, one thing we don't like to talk about too much is COVID, but I recall when I interviewed you for Cruising Interrupted a couple of years ago, you know, we were in the lockdown or going into the lockdown, and one of the things that you, along the lines of fitness, one of the things that you were thinking about getting into was, I can't remember if it was a 5K, 10K, or marathon. Did you ever do that?
Well, Well, the funny thing is like many things that were happening in 2020, we did have a lot of free time. So I did say, well, I'll make it a thing to do because we can't do much traveling. I will train for a marathon, try to do my first marathon. As it turns out, that event did get canceled. So I still have yet to do that marathon, but I do a bit of running still. No organized events. My travel schedule doesn't really allow me to plan for being around for any particular events. Trips will come up and things like that, but I do mix it in. But yeah, I'm disappointed to say I never did get to do that sort of goal of completing a marathon yet.
Similar to fitness, adventure is integral to your cruising journey. Give us a sense for a few of the greatest adventures you have experienced.
Well, this past year was quite busy as travel rebounded. So some of the really fun things I got to go do was an exotic trip on the Nile River with Viking, their new ship Viking Osiris. So I got to explore Egypt. Also went to Antarctica, back to Antarctica actually in December, which is always an amazing experience. From the journey itself on the ship to actually being there and being among the wildlife and doing kayaking and things like that. It's very exciting. And then I did get to go back to Alaska, which is always a favorite destination for a lot of great outdoor activities as well. And my first trip to the Galapagos, I finally got to get that bucket list destination checked off. And that is just an incredible experience. We went with Silver Sea on Silver Origin, their new luxury cruise ship down there.
Now, I am going on my first trip to Alaska in a few months, although I don't expect to do a whole lot of outside activities like you would do. What kind of things did you do when you were in Alaska?
Well, we did what you call a lot of like kayaking, shore walks, a little bit of hiking into the native forests that they have down there in Southeast Alaska. And generally on this particular cruise, it was maybe more of a hybrid sort of expedition type or traditional cruise sort of mixed together. It was on Ocean Victory
Mm-hmm.
from American Queen Voyages. So it gave a little mix of what a lot of people might enjoy, whether you want to relax or get out there and do some active travel. A lot of things were Zodiac tours based around seeing the glaciers and going into the fjords and things like that.
Now, you have an incredibly diverse cruising history so that we can all experience it for a few minutes vicariously through you. Tell us about the most luxurious vessel you've experienced.
Um, I do tend to like being on the small ship adventures these days, but some of the most luxurious ones I have had in recent years have been on Regent Seven Seas, which is really known for being a high-end cruise line, and they have the ships Regent Seven Seas Explorer and Regent Seven Seas Splendor, sister ships, about 740, 750 passengers each. And they are just over the top with the luxury. You've got the huge amount of space per passenger on board, all the dining and the accommodations, your cabins, amazing service, the restaurants, the food. So if you are looking for a splurge, that is one that I will never forget, being on those ships.
Now, I know that, from what we've talked about so far, the listeners probably think that, you do just adventure and luxury cruising. But I also know that you are a big proponent of the mega ships. Talk about some recent cruises on your favorite traditional mega ships.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's Allure of the Seas, which is one of the original giant ships from Royal Caribbean, relocated down to Galveston, Texas. So it was kind of a pleasure to be able to take my friend Kevin on his very first cruise ever, and to do it on such a large ship like that has all the activities on board, so many venues, all the entertainment, skating rink. You can do water sports up at the top on the the surfing simulators and the zip line and things like that. So he was just overwhelmed and wowed. And I also did get to cruise on Norwegian Cruise Line's new Norwegian Prima when it debuted in Iceland before it came over. So those are a couple of the ships and the large ships, mega ships, that I was excited about. And it's always great to get back on those big ships because there's a different type of energy there, of course, and there's all sorts of things to do. And it's great for families and friends when they want to have special outings and have a lot of options for activities.
So you were on the inaugural cruise for Prima. Did you get to see Katy Perry? I understand she was the godmother.
Yeah, she was a godmother, and she was around the ship, and she was actually enjoying the cruise. I know a lot of godmothers. There's some men who are god people. I'm not sure what the term is there for godfathers, I guess, on some ships.
I know.
A lot of those.
Pitbull is a godfather.
Pitbull was as well, yeah. So he sort of set the trend and got some men involved. But a lot of times those people that are on board and aren't, or they sort of pop in, do the event and leave. She actually cruised and was with her family. Orlando Bloom was on board. She gave a concert and they were participating in some of the game shows and they seemed to really enjoy it. So it was kind of neat to see celebrities even enjoying cruising as much as we do.
An added unexpected treat. So I know that you are a contributing writer to Quirky Cruise. We had them on the show recently. What's the quirkiest vessel you ever covered for them?
Yeah, Heidi and Ted are great over there at Quirky Cruise. They're building a nice site for people who are aficionados of small ship cruising. And I would say in some of the recent contributions I had to them that I really liked a lot were that trip to Egypt on Viking Osiris. She gives me a lot of space to write all my experiences and a lot of photography that gets displayed there. So that is awesome. And I also went in the Caribbean on Sea Dream Yacht Club. So many people have been telling me about what a great experience this is. You're on an older ship, about 40 years old, but the service and food is just incredible. And they have a lot of active things you can do from their water sports marina. So we had a great time on that ship, and I was able to write about that for them as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What are you working on at In the Loop Travel right now?
Well, like I said, I had a really busy year last year, so I took January to sort of refresh and relax after such a busy travel schedule and catch up on some of the work and the content I'm trying to create for the website and some of my clients, and set my schedule for the new year. And we're going to be off and running again with a lot of trips coming up this year. We're going to Chile for a Patagonian Fjords cruise with Viking on Viking Octantis, one of their two new expedition ships. In general, for In the Loop Travel, you can go check out the website, inthelooptravel.com, but it is going to be redesigned by summer. So I'm putting some work into that. It's going to have a lot better look as well. So those are some of the things I'm busy working on right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you kind of alluded to it already, but let us know, how do we follow In the Loop Travel on social media? I know you mentioned your website. How else
Right.
do we keep up with John?
Right. In addition to the website, I'm active on YouTube. We have a nice YouTube channel that puts a lot of reviews out and ship tours and room tours so people can really get a look at what they're getting into on their trip. I'll do vlogs and sort of give tours of the ship. And so I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook and Twitter, and all of those will be found by searching for In the Loop Travel.
So let's shift a little to the future. So you kind of mentioned what you have booked near term. Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, the trip to Chile, and then beyond that, I'm going to go to the Baja Peninsula and the Sea of Cortez with Scenic on Scenic Eclipse. Later in the year, I'm going to be going to Japan for the first time. I'm excited about
Wow.
that on Windstar. Yeah, and a couple European river cruises with some new ships on the Danube, and a couple of trips to the Arctic with National Geographic Resolution Lindblad expeditions, as well as a new ship coming out for a company called Swan Hellenic. They have a new ship that will be starting and sailing in the Arctic. It'd be my first time doing Arctic cruise around Svalbard.
Well, I know I mentioned this to you one time on social media, but I'll state it again for the world to hear. If you are looking for an administrative assistant to help you carry bags on some of these luxury vessels, I'm available.
All right. I would definitely keep that in mind. I'll put you in my Rolodex.
Hey, what's on your bucket? How does a guy who goes on these unbelievable vessels have a bucket list? But I'll ask anyway. What's on your bucket list?
Well, true enough, there's a lot I've done, and I'm very fortunate. But this world is so big and wonderful that there's plenty left to do. And of course, life is too short, so I try to keep going. I've not been to Australia yet, so I'd love to travel all around Australia. I figure I'm gonna need a big chunk of free time when I go over and do that. And also, I need to travel more in Africa. I'd love to do a proper African safari, and that is high on the bucket list. And do a trek up, maybe just see the gorillas in Rwanda as well.
Do you do much land travel anymore? Is it almost exclusively cruises?
I do a bit of land travel, but the cruise industry is thriving and does keep me very busy, and it's nothing to complain about to be doing all these cruise trips. But I do envision a time where I would like to maybe set a schedule that's more in some of these destinations on land that I'd really like to see. But no complaints right now. I'll stay busy on the ships.
So, John, we're going to shift gears right now and talk about a couple of fun cruise questions, and then perhaps an oddball question. You've probably been asked this before. I always like to ask this of guests so that I can get some ideas. What's your favorite cruise drink or cruise dish or both?
Okay. If people know me and follow a little bit of my social media, they'll understand that I'm really a big craft beer guy. So I will drink every craft beer you have available on the ship. I love to get a taste of the region I'm sailing in, what they're putting out, what they offer. So I'll always defer to a beer over a wine or a mixed drink, actually. And as far as a cruise dish, the food, I'm not that picky a eater. I like some staples. Like I'll always try to evaluate the burgers available and the pizzas and things like that. But if I'm traveling to a special place, I definitely like to try the food of that region or destination. Like in Southeast Asia, I'll try a lot of the fish dishes and the noodle dishes and try to see what the spice levels are cranked up to and things like that. So I'm up for a little bit of everything. It's always going to depend on the destination.
So just as you are an adventurous traveler, you sound like you are an adventurous eater.
Yeah. My mom would be surprised. I used to push away a lot of the strange food on my plate when I was younger, but I'm branching out there a little more.
So let me be nosy. What's the most unique dish you've eaten in the exotic lands you visited?
All right. I've done a street food tour in Cambodia, so that got kind of weird, and we were eating like little frogs and tarantulas on a stick and things like that, scorpions. So that was probably the most exotic dishes I've had.
All righty then. Frogs and tarantulas on a stick. I hope to emulate your traveling experience, but I won't be emulating your willingness to try some foods.
Yeah.
So the next, what I hope is a fun question. What's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise experience?
Well, sort of quirky and unusual, I would think is one of the early cruises I did on one of the big ships. If people out there, your audience probably remembers Royal Caribbean and Celebrity. They have a late night adult sort of scavenger hunt competition called the Quest. And I can remember a group of new friends, some ladies, deciding that I was going to be the one who they would dress up and put a bra on and a dress, wrap me in a dress and put makeup on. So imagine my ugly mug all dressed up. I had to be the most unattractive woman you've ever seen in high heels up there on the stage. But that was a hilarious night.
Photos, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are photos, but you will not be seeing them.
How's the saying go? Photos or it didn't happen? Finally, John, you have a very large following. And let me say welcome to the many In the Loop travel fans who are listening. Share one thing that my listeners and your followers don't know about John.
All right. Well, like I mentioned early on in our talk, I did come from a newspaper background. I used to be a sports writer. So I have a huge passion for sports and sports trivia. And if you catch me around, we're going to talk sports all the time. That's just something I love to do. So I'm a big sports fan, and I love those competitions and watching sports and playing trivia games. And cruise ships often have trivia contests. I really enjoy that.
Who? Speaking of sports, who's your favorite team and who's your favorite athlete?
Curious to me, as I grew up in upstate New York, but I never took to those regional teams. So I've got kind of a diverse group of sports teams I root for. It's the Minnesota Vikings, the Cincinnati Reds, and the Philadelphia 76ers.
You're all right with me, John.
All right.
Finally, we're going to put you to work. Please tell the listeners who is the winner of this week's copy of The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted.
All right, everybody. Big drum roll here. We've got a winner, and it is going to be Janet Horde Mercer. Congratulations.
All right. So Janet is a member of the Joy of Cruising podcast group. Anyone who joins that group or either enters at my website is eligible to rent a free book. So I'll be following up with her shortly. Thank you very much, John. Continued best wishes to In the Loop Travel. You do so much in the cruising world. I'm pretty sure if you're willing, we would love to have you back sometime in the not too distant future. Best wishes and take care of yourself.
Thanks so much, Paul. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for listening, everybody. Travel adventurously.
All right, John. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted can be ordered at the link on the joyofcruisingpodcast.com, each for $16.99 plus shipping. Order the soon-to-be-released The Joy of Cruising again, also at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com for $18.99. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. Again, the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast. Enter to win a copy of The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted while supplies last at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or both to increase your chance to win. A winner will be announced on each show. Please leave us a review and tell a friend about us. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed the brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.